Day 206 of the Ukrainian war map, also known as Russia's devastating invasion of Ukraine. Juzzy here, and today is another quick update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to the happenings on the ground in Ukraine. And as always, I like to start off with some of these Russian military hardware and personnel losses. So you can see eliminated in combat 54,250 as of the last reporting period on the 17th of September there today. Now, on top of that, I like to focus on the military hardware losses. So quite a decent 11 more losses for armored combat vehicles, followed by 3 additional tanks, 4 additional artillery units, and 1 aircraft. So I'll move back across to the map now, where we move to the Kharkiv area, the Oblast, and really the front line of it, where the Ukrainian Special Forces continued their assault and crossed the Oskil River. So I'll just zoom into that one here, and this Oskil River right there, and even took over the eastern part of Kupiansk. Now, even the Russian side's local media said that eastern Kupiansk was taken by the Ukrainians as well. And in fact, if we take a quick look at the date map, we can see the changes there, more pushing into east of Kupiansk. There we go. And from here, the Ukrainian army is actually pushing south of this region there, down all the way to Borova. But I've got some footage here of a captured BRT-80, which is an armored personnel carrier, and munitions can be seen in this footage as well. Now, a bit more south, we have the recently liberated city of Shorov. So it's right here. In fact, I'll zoom out because it's quite the map change really. So I'll go back to the date map. So I've got yesterday here, and we can see that the Russian forces are all the way to the Seversky Donets River there. Then we go right, and then we click forward again, and then we click forward one more time. Okay, it goes that far. So basically, the Russian forces were pushed out of the I guess you could say the northeast part of the river. Now, it's good to see that we have the Ukrainians with this capability. I say this almost every day now. They're able to go over a river. It's as simple as that sounds. Whereas the Russian side has major logistics issues, supply issues, moving personnel across a river. So as basic as it seems, it's good to see that Ukraine can do that. And in this location here of Shorov, we have a video of a Ukrainian armed forces soldier putting up a flag saying the time, date, and location. And the 3CY you see down the bottom is actually Ukrainian for ZSU, which means the Ukraine Armed Forces. And add to that the fire emoticon. So therefore, basically, I'm going to say that that's saying the Ukrainian Armed Forces are on fire. Figuratively speaking, of course, there. Now, jumping back to what I was saying about crossing the river, so I've got some footage here as well to show you some Ukrainian forces going across the river in an SPG, so that is a self-propelled gun. It's hard to see here, but it's basically, it looks like a tank and is essentially a large howitzer mounted to an armored chassis with treads for mobility, just like a tank again. Now we'll move across to, this is more news-based, but at Izium, where more and more information is coming out about evidence of Russian war crimes in this recently liberated city here. And you know what, to be honest, I guess I have to report it. There's reports of photos of torture chambers and mass burial sites. I've even seen some pretty unsightly imagery, and I don't recommend you hunt them down on the internet. Now, a United Nations source told CNN that a team from the UN's Human Rights Monitoring Agency, the OHCHR, would be going to Izium and areas around it as soon as possible, basically for the collection of evidence for later war crimes against the Russian state, or later war crimes litigation, I should say. Now, we have more Russian tank losses confirmed in this region. More and more news and information comes out about this every day too, and therefore more gains to the Ukrainians' army, like this T-80 BV. Now, these are some of the best tanks available in relatively high number in the battlefield. There are T-90 tanks, so a generation up, you could say, that do exist, but there are very, very few of these on the field. Very, very rare. Also, we've got a photo of a Russian BMP-2, so it's an infantry fighting vehicle that was captured also by the Ukrainian army in the Kharkiv Oblast as well. Now, this one's pretty neat because it may look like the same as the dozens of already captured ones, but in fact, this is actually a very rare modernized version with a laser pulse beamer, which makes it easier to see faraway objects, even in the presence of interference. Really good for seeing things far away at night there too. And it's got a much more modern gunner sight on it. So very few of these ones were ever made. So lucky the Ukrainian soldier that gets to jump into one of these. There's also a whole bunch of munitions found, like this captured Russian BM-21 munitions dump, with a number of Grad rockets recovered as well, followed by in Izium a captured 125mm he shells. And to top it off, there's also these captured 152mm shells, something that the Ukrainian army has been using a significant portion of, really consumed a lot, and their existing Soviet supplies of these shells have been going quite down. It is quite difficult for NATO and the West to supply them easily, so it's good that you got a whole bunch more of these as well. Now, the outlook for this region into the maybe immediate future or midterm future is, from the various intelligence agencies around the world, is that Russia is likely to conduct a stubborn defense of remaining occupied areas in the Kharkiv Oblast, but also that it's unclear whether Russia's frontline forces have sufficient reserves or even adequate morale to withstand another concerted Ukrainian assault. So we'll see what happens here on the very east, the last part of the Kharkiv Oblast. Then we move across down to what I always call the ever-contested Donbass, because really it truly is. You can see these little oinky pigs and the arrows, so pretty much on the main line here, particularly near Bakhmut and Soledar still, Avdiivka, all sorts of spots. There is a lot of repelling from the Ukrainian forces. There was one spot that Russia took. So let me go to the date map there. It's a little bit south. There it is. You probably hardly saw that. So you can see just that little part there. In fact, it's not even taking the town as yet. So a small Russian gain in the south there. But the apparent problem with the Russian army, though, is small land advances always seem to cost them a great deal. A lot of military hardware, a lot of soldiers, and costs probably a lot of morale for the Russian forces too. Now we'll move across to other parts of the map where there is never really a dull moment. So we have the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast here, so this boomerang looking one, like I say, where Ukraine's air forces reported that they destroyed 3 Iskander K cruise missiles and 1 Orlan-10 unmanned aerial vehicle. And this is just using their air defenses, so that's pretty good to see. So both drones and particularly the Iskander ballistic missiles, these are meant to be quite high tech. So always good news when they're being shot down. Now, being that it's the same oblast, we might talk about the Kryvyi Rih city flooding, a little bit of an update there. So here's Kryvyi Rih. Now, the flooding and the water level in the Inulets River, this one here, which was getting flooded, goes all the way down to the Kherson front line, has decreased from where it was a day ago. So certainly, lower water levels, due to large water flowing to another reservoir now. Which means also running water is back in the city, running there too, which is good to see. Now, basically, the story with this over the last, so 1 day ago and then 2 days ago, Russia actually hit the Kryvyi Dam. Russia just wanted to drown the area, but in particular, drown the lower region that goes down to the Kherson Oblast in an attempt to basically use it as a military advantage to stop apparently Kherson offensive, so Ukrainian pontoons and soldiers there. But they were doing all this, or attempting to do all this, at the expense of civilians in this northern city up here. So not a good move, not a nice thing to do, obviously. Bit of a dick move. Now I'll move just across for a moment to Zaporizhia, where there is the town or city of Melitopol. So explosions were reported near an airbase in Melitopol. Perhaps this one. We don't have a lot of information about that yet. And some other information in the area. So that would have been a HIMARS, just to quickly add there. I've also got a photo of this Russian T-90M tank with soft armor, reportedly in Melitopol as well. So these, like I said a little bit earlier, quite rare. You don't see a lot of them really anywhere in this war. In fact, some Russians are caught on intercepted calls laughing about, not a chance in the world that they're really going to get a T-90 tank. And I mentioned about the soft armor. So soft armor on tanks is the block-looking things on the side, which is like additional reactive tank armor specifically designed for anti-tank weapons, of which actually they're said to not work that well against javelins anyway. But they might look like the size of bricks from this photo, but on this actual tank model, they're quite big, if not bigger than a backpack. So yeah, quite big, these things. Extra protection, theoretically. Then we move across to the fairly newly contested front line of the Kherson region, where Russian media themselves reported casualties here following an explosion in occupied Kherson. So this is the Russia's state-controlled TASS news agency or media reported that one person died and one person was injured as a result of explosions in the temporarily occupied Kherson location in the last day. Now, according to Russia's TASS, it was a missile strike launched by Ukraine's armed forces when Russian proxies had their morning meetings in one of the administrative buildings in Kherson. So this happened about 24 hours ago. There wasn't a lot of information, so I didn't really mention on it, but there is a little bit of footage here. And this was the Ukrainians taking out a Russian headquarters of sorts, or a command post. And all in all, Ukrainians' Operational Command South, so for this district or region here, reported that the Ukrainian forces eliminated 33 Russian troops and destroyed 2 tanks, 1 Mr. B howitzer, 120mm mortar, and 9 armored vehicles. Which means we'll move across now to the news for the day, where Putin has been publicly speaking and says that in response to the Ukrainian army's recent actions, so the successful counteroffensive in the northern Kharkiv area, the Russian army decided to conduct warning strikes against them. To civilian infrastructure in Ukraine, such as the aforementioned Kryvyi Dam. Putin also said that the plan of operation in Ukraine, so the Russian plan, is not for correction, and he said the main goal is capturing the whole territory of the Donbass. So the Donbass region here, there's a white area, you can see the remainder of the border there. Now, there's really a couple of things or problems I might have with what he said. So first of all, Russian strikes on Ukraine's critical civilian infrastructure may very likely just push the West to send more arms to Kiev. And the second thing would be, as soon as Ukraine hit Russian targets, followed by the Ukrainians liberating their own territories, Russia then immediately bursts out in righteous anger, saying, "How dare you?" And yet attempting to shell Ukraine for the last 7 months back into the Stone Age is somehow okay. So twisted logic there, as it's always been on the Russian side. And I love any opportunity to bring up any media or any news or any military engagements that have really twisted logic. Now, in some further news, a Ukrainian survey came out for the third time since the war, looking to see the Ukrainian population's sentiment or perspective on the war. So the first question goes, do you want to give up some land to achieve peace? Only about 8% of Ukrainians said yes. The second option went more like, under no circumstance should Ukraine give up any of its territories, even if it means the war will last longer in order to preserve Ukraine's independence, of which most Ukrainians agreed with, 80-something percent, 87%. And the third option was unsure, they don't know, only a few people there. So the outcome of all this, more and more Ukrainians are looking to not give up or cede any land, even if it means the continuation of the war. I mean, 87%, quite a big number. And as you can see here, the three different bars, if I can get my words out. So there is an upward trend from the first April 2022 to June 2022 to now September this month of 2022, as you can see there. So pretty much an upward trend there. Now, in other news, Ilya Mendel, the press secretary for the Ukrainian president, said something a little bit interesting, which was that forced Russian mobilization campaigns in the Donbass area are likely depleting male populations in those areas. So the known as DNR or LNR, so the Donetsk People's Republic, that sort of thing, for along the front lines. And it's unfortunately not surprising. There's many stories at this point of Russians effectively conscripting any able-bodied man from the Donbass to enter the war and go to the front line. Like even waiting for young fathers, so Russian troops from Russia waiting for young fathers, picking up their kids outside of kindergartens. This is again where some of the morale problems are going to start setting in for these occupied regions. And in other somewhat interesting news, there are increasing sightings in Russia of mass transport of prison convoy vehicles in the direction of the border with Ukraine. Now, this is in follow-up to the Russian Wagner militia group mobilizing Russian prisoners recently again to go to the front line of the Donbass particularly. So effectively filling the ranks and filling frontline soldier quotas. Now, the last group of frontline Donbass prisoner soldiers were said to be sent in with only a couple of days training, and soon after they were just eliminated. So there's countless issues with this approach, but in the end, it's actually turning out to be not effective. And just a bit of a funny to round it off today, guys, with, I know that some of you will like this one with the comments I get. So there's footage here of the Ukrainian armed forces capturing a Russian position, where more examples of Russian soldiers just going crazy for white goods. It's not high value small items like jewelry loot that they're after or what have you, but instead we have discovered here 2 stolen fridges, a gas stove, a car, a quad bike, and tons of garbage. Now, some of these Russian soldiers are probably from the poorer eastern Russian territories, lured with promises of money and medals of honor, but instead they just seem to have this continued burning desire of a priority to get some white goods into their homes, which, let's be honest, they probably never will leave any of the front lines. So that's about it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button. Try to ignore the trolls where you can in the comments. They are pretty funny, though, with what they say sometimes. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.